I think our league has been built the right way as far as when it comes to the postseason. There's been dominant conferences throughout time. It's cool to mess around with an all-star game. You know, we prove that you could do that, but let's not get too crazy about the playoffs.
CC, what's your reaction to LeBron's comments?
The man's a smart guy. Probably not as smart collectively as the guy across from me, but common sense. All right, they've been tinkering with the NBA, with the schedule. But let's not get carried away. Let's float some ideas out there, because what we don't want to see is bi-coastal series, multiple series that are bi-coastal. So if you happen to have the championship in the conference semifinals, and they're bi-coastal, and then you get to the finals, and it happens to be bi-coastal, you're talking about a rough month for NBA players trying to get a crown. I think right now, and especially with LeBron staying in the East, I don't believe it's a problem. If he decides to go West, I believe they have to make an adjustment. But I just believe the time zones and the amount of TVs in the Eastern time zone, you cannot take the chance with the ratings, because that's what it's really about. You got 60% of the television sets are in
East Coast.
So if you remove those, what kind of numbers will we be getting for the finals? Because if you have, let's say, Houston makes it, and Golden State, they make it to the finals. What are we going to do about all those television sets on the East Coast that are basketball fans that decide to zone out because of regionally? So we have to look at that. That's one thing I think the NBA, they will have a hard time overcoming, the sheer numbers, the lack of numbers in the West compared to what's in the East.
This is a moot point if LeBron stays in the Eastern Conference. If LeBron stays in the Eastern Conference, LeBron's been in the league 14 years, as he mentioned yesterday in that interview. So there have been 14 championships. The East has won 6, the West has won 8. So that's one away from being dead even.
Right.
And we do have some recency bias when we talk about, oh, the West has been so dominant. Oh, no, not really. I mean, the best player in the league the entire time, in the sport where it matters the most who the best player is, has been out East. And let's not forget, there were some potentially great teams that we would have remembered totally differently if they didn't have to go through LeBron James. How would we think of the 60-win Bulls with MVP Derrick Rose similarly to how we thought of the young Thunder that made the NBA Finals?
Yeah, that's
if
a good
they
comparison.
hadn't lost in the conference finals to LeBron. What about if the Celtics could have extended the run of the Big Three if LeBron hadn't ended it when he went to Miami? What if the Pistons, who had, by the way, beaten the Lakers in the finals, taken the Spurs to 7, what if they had kept going if LeBron hadn't ended that run when he was in Cleveland? Like the first time around, there have been, and that's not even mentioning a 60-win Hawks team with 4 All-Stars that just got dispatched easily by LeBron and the Cavs his second go-around with Cleveland. So I don't think up until recently we have had this major discrepancy. What has happened recently is this. You have a team on the greatest run in NBA history in one conference.
Right.
And then you also had the Spurs.
On the back end.
On the back end, all of a sudden reinventing themselves. And then some teams trying to climb up there. The Thunder before KD left. The Rockets right now. So it felt like it was this giant discrepancy. But the only reason it hasn't been a giant discrepancy is because you have had a legitimate contender in the East for the last 8 years because of LeBron. If he does go out west, CC, I get what you're saying about the TV deals. But what you don't want is it to feel like every year the NBA Finals is the Western Conference Finals. You don't want that. Now, I don't know what you do about the bi-coastal part, about the travel. If to speak to your point, if all of a sudden you have in the conference or in the semifinals the Raptors playing the Warriors, and then you also have the Celtics playing the Lakers if they get better, and that's the semifinals, and in the finals you have another back and forth. That could be a problem, and the TV money is a big thing as well. I understand that. But from a competitive balance standpoint, I don't think it's had a big discrepancy up to this point. If LeBron were to go out west, that could happen.
How much influence does LeBron's opinion have at this point?
I think his opinion is just like anything else. He's the best player in the world, and if he says something that has some type of credence, I'm sure. Look where Adam Silver in the league is. Look at the relationship that we talk about between what they're doing at NBA and the Players Association. So we know the NBA listens to its players. I mean, they've already addressed the referee-player issue that if we were in any other league, it would take at least an offseason and all these owners' meetings to be able to bring it up before we heard about it. So the NBA has been very, very progressive. They listen to their players, and we know that they listen to the best player in the world, in LeBron.
The other thing that this would happen is there are already the NBA, some people think it's a strength, some people think it's a weakness. But one thing we know about the NBA, it's the league with the fewest upsets in the playoffs. Like, there are shockers in other sports. If you further stack the playoffs fairly, if you will, it's even less likely that you're going to have a 2011 Mavericks situation where a team does kind of, I don't want to say come out of nowhere because Dirk was on the team, but a team have a, wow, how did that team go win the title? Would have been, I guess, the 04 Pistons. That, you know, those situations would be fewer and more far between. I don't know if the league necessarily wants that. What I know they don't want is for all 8 of the best 8 players in the league to be in one conference and in one side of the bracket come the playoffs, and that's what they're trying to adjust for.
Right, and I think they've gotten ahead of the cavalry by even approaching the conversation, because now if LeBron was to go to the West, they've already started the conversation that it would be a lot easier to make that type of change or that type of adjustment. So, but LeBron, he does have weight in everything. And, of course, his decision is going to be paramount as far as what the decision will be.
But the other thing, and this is why when LeBron says it's cyclical, we do have to keep in mind, if we're talking about the next generation of great players, what conference is Giannis in? What conference is Joel Embiid in? What conference is Ben Simmons in?
Yes.
And Kyrie, and I know he's this generation, but he's one of the younger great players in this league. Kristaps Porzingis, when he comes back, all of those guys are out east. The West is top-heavy, but it's not a bunch of great, aside from what they have in Minnesota, it's not a bunch of great young teams. It's a bunch of really good veteran teams. So it could fix itself, especially depending on what LeBron does.
Do you think that this had any indication on the feelings of LeBron with what he's going to do in his decision about what he does?
So I think a lot of people are going to read this and say, oh, LeBron knows he's staying out east. I still believe what I've believed all year. LeBron does not know where he's going to play next year. I think LeBron is a historian and a student of the game. And when he talks about what it would do to the record books, his recall for championships from before he was born is elite. Like, I do think he cares about the record books and the history of the game. I don't think this is about where he's going to be playing next year.
Right, and rechanging the seeding is a little overreaction right now to LeBron potentially going to the West, because 3 of the 4 teams potentially he would go to or out West. So you do have to look at it before he makes that decision.
I think our league has been built the right way as far as when it comes to the postseason. There's been dominant conferences throughout time. It's cool to mess around with an all-star game. You know, we prove that you can do that, but let's not get too crazy about the playoffs.
CC, what's your reaction to LeBron's comments?
Well, I think it's an overreaction. When you look at the conferences, people can go back over the last 10 years, the last 20 years as far as the titles. But the Western Conference, it is top-heavy more than the East. But when you go down to the bottom, you can't say that the bottom of the West is better than the East. You got New Orleans, you got the Clippers at the 9 spot, Utah at the 10.
When you say the bottom, you don't even mean the very bottom. You mean the bottom of the playoff picture.
Yes.
Yeah, we're not even talking about Phoenix and Dallas.
No, I believe those are matched up with Orlando, Brooklyn.
Right, of course.
With, those teams, they match off. But where I see the West, the top 2 teams, that being Houston and Golden State, I believe both of those teams can win an NBA title. I believe it's going to be hard to find anyone, a mystery team in the Eastern Conference besides Cleveland, that we can say can go through that gauntlet of either beating LeBron and then beating the team out West. So the top is heavier. The middle parts are around the same, but the bottom is where I think that the Western, they're about the same as the East. Like, they're not that much better. You talk about the numbers through the years from a championship standpoint that even make you think the East is not that far from the West. It's just that the best players, a majority of them, are playing in the West in the recent years that tilts in their favor.
And you've been against the idea of this change since it got brought up because of the TV schedule, because of the travel. For those reasons, you don't like you like it the way it is.
Yes, I do. I like East versus West to finish it out because people don't realize that almost 60% of the TV sets or the human population is in the Eastern time zone. So when you're trying to do a finals that's going to start at 9 o'clock, you have to realize and take that. Who are the partners of the NBA? TNT, ESPN. I can guarantee you they care. So this is a great argument sometime to have on Twitter, but when it's played out from a practical standpoint, it becomes more problematic.
But it also historically, just since LeBron's been in the league, let's just take these 14 years. He mentioned it. The West has not been overwhelmingly dominant. There have been 14 championships given out. 8 have been won by the West. 6 have been won by the East. Oh, well, the West have had these more dominant teams. Well, really? Because, like, a dominant team right before LeBron got there was the Lakers with Shaq and Kobe. Who ended them? The Detroit Pistons, who won that title, then took the next dominant team, the Spurs, to 7. And, by the way, then LeBron ended them. The Celtics, who beat Kobe's next iteration. The Celtics beat that Lakers team, then took that Lakers team to 7. Who ended them? Oh, LeBron and the Heat, a team that we thought could have been the next great team. The Bulls with Derrick Rose pre-injury, 60 wins, an MVP. Very similar, by the way, to the young Thunder team that made the NBA Finals. What happened to them? Yeah. They ran into LeBron. So, like, the reason it feels this way is because it feels like there's only one team that matters in the East. It's the team with LeBron. Well, yeah. That's the case. When you have the best player ever playing in his prime in a conference, he's going to dominate that conference. I do understand the league's concern that if LeBron goes out west, what does it mean? And this could be a contingency. But as our friend Joy Taylor said, the idea that LeBron's scared of this, he knows he's going to have to beat a team from the West to win a title anyway. He's in this thing to win titles. So he's going to have to go through the West no matter what.
And the people who make an argument for the West, if they were to bring up, well, when LeBron went against San Antonio in Cleveland the first time, it wasn't close. When LeBron went against San Antonio in Miami, that series wasn't as close. And then the Golden State, this last series, like, even though the numbers are 8 and 6, there's a few of those series that they were not that close. So if they were arguing that would be one of their points.
But San Antonio wasn't close the second time, but the Heat had won the first time. And Golden State wasn't close this year, but the Cavs had won the year before. I mean, it's closer than people give it credit for, I would say.
Well, we're close to the end. That's it.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.